So, picture this. I was just sipping my coffee, getting ready for a regular Tuesday, when Preston, the CEO's son-in-law, fired me at 9:06 a.m. Just like that, gone. He had no idea what he'd truly messed with, though. An $840 million patent has my maiden name all over it. Last week they tried to kick me out, but I walked right back in with legal papers locking them down. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. My name is Evelyn Shaw. Or, well, it was Evelyn Hayes before I got married, a detail that would soon become, shall we say, very important. For years, I had worked at Sterling Innovations, a big tech company handling patent applications. It wasn't the most glamorous job, I know, but I loved it. I loved the precise language, the way a truly clever idea could be protected, the feeling of helping innovation stay safe. My desk was always neat, even though my head was usually swimming with complex legal terms and technical drawings. Every morning, I'd get in early, before the usual rush, and make myself a cup of jasmine tea. It was my ritual, my quiet start to a day of detail-oriented work. I liked routine, you know? It made me feel like things were in order, like I could handle whatever came next. This particular Tuesday, the light was soft coming through my office window. I was reviewing the final draft of a major patent application, a new kind of data encryption algorithm, super fancy stuff. This one was big, really big. It had been years in the making, and I had personally shepherded it through every single stage, working closely with the original inventor. My coffee was steaming, my mind focused on the legal wording, making sure every comma, every clause, was perfect. Suddenly, my office door swung open, and there he was, Preston Vance. He was Mr. Sterling's son-in-law, a new hire who'd been brought in a few months ago as some sort of innovation director. He had that look, you know? Like he owned the place, even though he'd only been around for a blink. He was always wearing these expensive suits, too tight usually, and always had this smirk. He'd barely said 2 words to me before this, just a quick "Morning, Evelyn," if I passed him in the hall. Today, his face was stony, not even a hint of a smirk. My stomach gave a little lurch. This was not going to be a good morning. "Evelyn," he said, his voice flat, like he was reading from a script. He wasn't even looking at me fully, more like he was looking through me. He held a piece of paper, thick and official-looking. "I need to speak with you. Now." I put down my pen slowly. "Of course, Preston. What can I do for you?" I tried to keep my voice even, but a tiny thread of panic had started to weave itself through my calm. Something felt really wrong. Mr. Albright, my colleague who'd been here for decades, had been hinting that things were changing around here. "New blood means new brooms," he'd said, shaking his head. I hadn't thought much of it then, figuring my work spoke for itself. Turns out, I was wrong. Preston walked right up to my desk, not even sitting down. He just stood there, towering over me a bit. "Effective immediately, Evelyn, your employment with Sterling Innovations is terminated." He said it so fast, so cold. My breath caught in my throat. Terminated? Just like that? I couldn't believe it. My hands started to tremble, just a little. I had dedicated 12 years to this company. 12 years. What? I stammered, feeling my face go warm. "Why? What did I do?" He barely glanced at the paper in his hand. "Company restructuring. We're, moving in a different direction. Your role is no longer necessary." He spoke like I was an outdated piece of software, not a person. My eyes darted to the clock on my computer screen, 9:06 a.m. The exact moment my world started to tilt. "A different direction?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper now. It felt like a punch to the gut, a deep, unfair blow. "I've been here over a decade. I handle all the major intellectual property filings. The new encryption patent, the one that's supposed to be worth a fortune, I've been overseeing it since day one." Preston gave a dismissive wave of his hand. "That's all been accounted for, Evelyn. Other people can pick it up. Your services are no longer required. HR will be in touch about your final pay and benefits." He turned to leave, just like that. "Wait." I practically yelled, standing up so fast my chair scraped backward. "You can't just do this. There has to be a reason, a real reason." My voice was shaking, and I could feel tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady myself. What about my client relationships? What about the pending filings? You can't just cut me loose like this without a proper handover, especially not with the Hayes algorithm patent. I said the name automatically, out of habit. The words just came out. Preston paused, his hand on the doorframe. He actually chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Hayes algorithm? Evelyn, that's not even your name anymore. It's the Sterling algorithm now, and it's being handled. Don't worry about it. He gave me another one of his dismissive looks. Honestly, Evelyn, your role was more administrative than anything else. We're looking for more dynamic people. My mind didn't race, it froze. Hayes algorithm? I said it again, slowly. He just called it that. And then he changed it. My maiden name. The name on that patent. I felt a sudden, cold clarity cut through the shock and humiliation. The patent. The one I had invented years ago, before I even joined Sterling Innovations, back when I was just out of college, working on a side project, a little idea about data encryption. I had filed a provisional patent then under my maiden name, Evelyn Hayes. It was something I had offered to Sterling Innovations as part of my hiring package, a sort of bonus, years ago. A very specific, very rare arrangement where the company would fund its development and eventual full patent, but my name, as the original inventor, was tied to the core of it. It had been years, almost a decade, and I hadn't thought about it in a while, not its initial filing anyway. It was just my patent, one that the company had developed further. I was the inventor. They were the assignee. That was the agreement. Preston was still standing there, looking impatient. Just pack your things, Evelyn. Security will escort you out. He opened the door fully, then, as an afterthought, added, "Oh, and don't worry about anything proprietary. We've got it covered." With that, he walked out, leaving me alone in my suddenly silent office. I sat back down, heavily. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. Humiliation, yes, but also a growing feeling of something else, determination. Administrative? Not necessary? More dynamic people? I worked here for 12 years, I poured my life into this place, and he just discarded me. And the Hayes algorithm? He just dismissed it like it was nothing. I closed my eyes, a thought forming, clear and sharp through the fog of shock. They were trying to erase me, and they were trying to erase my work. But they forgot one crucial detail. The initial patent application, the very first one, had my maiden name on it, Evelyn Hayes, as the sole inventor. Sterling Innovations was the assignee, sure, but I was the inventor. That meant something legally. It meant a lot. Especially for a patent that, by now, was valued in the hundreds of millions. I got up, not to pack, but to pull out my old, dusty employment contract from the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. And then, a call to a friend who was an intellectual property lawyer. A very good one. This wasn't just about me getting fired. This was about something much, much bigger. I wasn't just Evelyn Shaw, fired employee. I was Evelyn Hayes, the inventor. And they had just made a very, very big mistake. My hands were still shaking, but now it wasn't from fear. It was from a different kind of energy. A deep, quiet fury. This was far from over. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Kapoor, listened patiently while I relayed the whole story, my voice still trembling a little even hours later. We met at a quiet coffee shop away from my usual routes. She was older, with kind eyes, but her gaze was absolutely focused. I showed her my old employment contract, a yellow document from when I first started at Sterling Innovations. And then, the critical piece of the puzzle, a copy of the provisional patent application for the Hayes algorithm, filed years before I even joined the company, listing me, Evelyn Hayes, as the inventor. Sterling Innovations had licensed it from me and then developed it further, eventually filing the full patent application where they were the assignee. But the core invention, the original insight, was undeniably mine. That was the deal. Evelyn, Ms. Kapoor said, her voice calm but firm, this is a massive oversight on their part. A monumental one. She tapped the old patent document. The original inventor always retains certain moral rights, even if they've assigned the commercial rights to a company. More importantly, your employment agreement, specifically the clause about pre-existing intellectual property, is very clear. They developed it, yes, but your original contribution, your name on the foundational document, is, well, it's undeniable. I swallowed hard. So, Preston just firing me like that, without cause, when I'm tied to something so valuable, it's not just unfair, it's illegal? It's certainly grounds for a very strong legal challenge, Ms. Kapoor confirmed. Especially if they try to move forward with the patent without you, or worse, try to claim the original invention entirely as theirs. This patent, the full one that's pending, is potentially worth hundreds of millions. $840 million, you said, based on the latest projections. I just nodded, my mouth dry. To fire the original inventor of a cornerstone technology like that, right before its finalization and commercialization, without cause and without proper compensation, it's corporate suicide, Evelyn. Or, at least, it will be for Preston. She smiled, a small, knowing smile that actually made me feel a tiny bit better. They likely assumed you were just an employee, easily replaced. They forgot you were also the architect of their future. The next few days were a blur. I didn't go back to the office, not to pack my desk anyway. Instead, I spent hours with Ms. Kapoor, going over every detail of my employment, every clause, every email. We were building a case, not just for wrongful termination, but for my rightful place in the invention of the Hayes algorithm. The company's attempt to remove me last week, as I mentioned in my hook, wasn't about me getting fired yet, but about a very subtle, almost sneaky, email I received from HR. It had been an official-looking request for me to sign a new, updated intellectual property agreement, which, upon closer inspection, would have retroactively stripped me of my original inventor status for all past work, essentially handing over any remaining claim I had to the Hayes algorithm. It was a thinly veiled attempt to clean up their books before Preston's axe fell. But I hadn't signed it. My gut told me something was off, and I had already consulted Ms. Kapoor about it, just a quick, hey, is this normal, conversation. She had advised me not to sign it, thankfully. That was last week my first inkling of trouble. So when Preston fired me, I already had a lawyer on retainer and a clear understanding of my rights. That made all the difference. Last Monday, the HR manager, Ms. Thorne, a woman who always seemed to carry a clipboard and a perpetual frown, called me. She wanted me to come in to discuss my exit package. I knew what that meant, them trying to get me to sign away my rights quietly. I told her I'd be there, but not alone. The next morning, the last week part happened. I walked into Sterling Innovations, not as a victim, but as a person with legal backing. Ms. Kapoor was right there beside me, carrying a sleek briefcase. We went straight to HR. Ms. Thorne was surprised, to say the least. Evelyn, what is this? Ms. Thorne asked, her frown deepening. She was clearly expecting me to come in and sign her forms. Ms. Kapoor stepped forward. Ms. Thorne, I'm Ms. Kapoor, Evelyn's legal counsel. We're here to discuss the terms of Evelyn's termination, particularly in light of her contractual obligations regarding intellectual property. She handed Ms. Thorne a thick envelope. These are preliminary legal papers, including a demand for full reinstatement or, failing that, an injunction preventing the company from proceeding with the Hayes algorithm patent without Evelyn's explicit involvement and proper recognition. Ms. Thorne's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. I could see the color drain from her face. She looked at me, then at Ms. Kapoor, then back at the papers. She mumbled something about needing to consult with legal. Ms. Kapoor smiled. I suggest you do so immediately. The clock is ticking, and any action taken on that patent without Evelyn's consent would be a very grave error. The shock on Ms. Thorne's face was almost comical. She had clearly expected a quiet, easy dismissal. But I wasn't quiet. And I certainly wasn't easy. I stood there, feeling a strange mix of vindication and fear. This was real. This was a battle. But I was ready. I had walked in, not to clean out my desk, but to lock them out of something vital. I had just taken the first step in protecting what was mine, and by extension, what was truly valuable to the company, even if they didn't realize it yet. A few days after that, the phone calls started. Not from Preston, of course. He was too arrogant for that. But from Ms. Thorne, and then, surprisingly, from Mr. Sterling himself, the CEO. His voice, usually so calm and measured, sounded strained. He requested a meeting. Not an exit interview, but a discussion about the future of the Hayes algorithm. Suddenly, I wasn't just Evelyn, the fired employee. I was Evelyn, the inventor they desperately needed. The power had shifted. It was a huge moment for me, realizing just how much leverage I actually had. This was a whole different game now. My humiliation was still there, a raw spot, but it was slowly being replaced by a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about right and wrong, and about recognizing the true value of an idea and the person who brought it to life. I felt stronger, ready for whatever came next. The meeting was set for Friday morning in the main boardroom. Ms. Kapoor and I arrived punctually. This time, I didn't feel a speck of fear. Just a cool resolve. Preston was there, looking uncomfortable, his usual smirk replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. Mr. Sterling, the CEO, sat at the head of the long table, his face drawn, looking much older than I remembered. Miss Thorne from HR was also present, along with a team of lawyers from Sterling Innovations. The air was thick with tension, heavier than any silence I'd ever felt. "Evelyn, thank you for coming," Mr. Sterling began, his voice surprisingly soft. He usually started meetings with a booming presence. "And Ms. Kapoor, of course." Ms. Kapoor gave a polite, firm nod. "Mr. Sterling, we're here to discuss Evelyn's reinstatement and the full recognition of her pivotal role in the Hayes algorithm patent." Preston scoffed quietly, but Mr. Sterling shot him a silencing look. "Preston, please. This is serious." He turned back to me. "Evelyn, I was not fully aware of the specifics regarding your original contribution to the patent." Preston made a decision that, in hindsight, was premature. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We value your 12 years of service and, of course, your expertise." I looked directly at Preston. Premature or uninformed? My voice was steady, clearer than I thought it would be. Preston dismissed me as administrative, saying my role was no longer necessary. He called the Hayes algorithm the Sterling algorithm and said other people can pick it up. It seems he didn't quite grasp what he was picking up. Preston shifted in his chair, his face reddening. "Evelyn, that's not fair. I was acting in the company's best interest, streamlining operations." "Streamlining operations by firing the original inventor of your most valuable upcoming patent?" Ms. Kapoor interjected smoothly. "A patent, Mr. Sterling, that is currently valued at approximately $840 million, according to your own internal projections. To proceed with the final stages of that patent without the original inventor's explicit cooperation and acknowledgement, especially after a wrongful termination, would not only jeopardize the patent itself, but open the company up to significant legal challenges. Challenges that could cost far more than a mere $840 million in damages and lost revenue." She gestured to the thick stack of legal documents in front of her. "We've prepared an injunction, ready to be filed today, which would freeze all activity on the Hayes algorithm patent until this matter is fully resolved in court. This would, effectively, halt your most significant new revenue stream indefinitely." Mr. Sterling's face paled. He knew. He clearly knew the gravity of the situation now. His own lawyers were staring at their notes, avoiding eye contact. They'd probably tried to warn him. This was the moment of truth, the climax of this whole awful situation. My reputation, my work, and the company's future were all sitting on this table. "Evelyn," Mr. Sterling said, looking at me with a new kind of respect, or maybe just desperation. "What do you propose?" "My proposition is simple, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice strong. "First, full reinstatement to my previous position, with a formal apology from Preston and a public acknowledgement of my inventor status for the Hayes algorithm. Second, a new, revised contract that explicitly details my ongoing royalties from the patent's commercialization, as per the original intent, which your previous HR attempted to quietly nullify. Third, Preston Vance's employment with Sterling Innovations must be terminated. I held his gaze. He not only humiliated me and jeopardized the company's most valuable asset through sheer ignorance and arrogance, but he also tried to undermine my intellectual property rights. That is not the conduct of someone who acts in the company's best interest. A stunned silence fell over the room. Preston actually gasped. "You can't do that," he practically yelled. "I'm the CEO's son-in-law." Mr. Sterling closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, a deep sigh escaping him. He looked from Preston to me, to Ms. Kapoor. The weight of his decision was heavy in the room. He was trapped between family and the survival of his company. "Evelyn is right," he finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "Preston, your actions have caused severe damage to this company's reputation and financial future. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Ms. Thorne will handle your severance." Preston started to protest, but one of Sterling's lawyers quickly escorted him out, his face a furious shade of red. It was a shocking moment, a swift and brutal consequence for his entitlement. I felt a wave of relief, a quiet satisfaction that was deeper than mere revenge. It was about justice, about proving that true value, true contribution, cannot be dismissed so easily. "Evelyn," Mr. Sterling continued, turning back to me, "your terms are understood. We will draw up the new contract with Ms. Kapoor's oversight, effective immediately. And my deepest apologies, personally, for this egregious error. We would be honored to have you back." I looked around the room, at the stunned faces of the other lawyers. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, tried to erase my legacy. But now my name, Evelyn Hayes, was not just on a patent, it was etched into the very foundation of their company's future. The humiliation was gone, replaced by a quiet triumph. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic, it was simply the truth, the law, and the undeniable value of my work, all laid bare. The truth always comes out, eventually. This wasn't just a story about getting fired, it was about knowing your worth, even when others try to tell you that you have none. It was about how a simple name, a maiden name, held the key to everything. So Evelyn Shaw, née Hayes, walked back into Sterling Innovations not just as an employee, but as an indispensable architect of their future, with a new contract, new royalties, and a reinforced sense of purpose. It was a hard lesson for everyone, especially for Preston, but a valuable one. And that, my friends, is how my regular Tuesday became anything but regular. And hey, if you've ever felt like your hard work was overlooked, or like someone tried to take credit for what was rightfully yours, tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you handled it.